Hello. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about my impressions from the recent 2024 Day of the Dead visit to Mexico. As many of you know, I spent a week in different parts of the country, specifically Mexico City, a day in Chiapas, but most of the week was in the state of Tabasco. It was my first time there in that part of the southern Gulf of Mexico, and I wanted to talk about some of the things that made this trip especially meaningful, memorable, and worthwhile, and also to a point, the ways in which this trip was very similar to other trips that you may have seen me take in previous years, such as, for example, the week that I spent in Peru, the 2 weeks in Peru, the recent week in Colombia, New Mexico, and other places where there are some common trends. There are some things that I very often look for, and I actually happened to do while I was spending this week in Mexico. I would want to start out with some of my acquisitions, some of the purchases. As many of you know, I'm a big coffee fan, and wherever I go, I look for coffee. And fortunately, I was able to buy coffee. I got a package of coffee grown in Tabasco. So I got this on my way out from Tabasco on my return to Mexico City. I also had to buy chocolate because Tabasco is actually the state that is Mexico's largest producer of cacao. It is an important cash crop in the area. So, and I also had some opportunities to sample the locally grown cacao, and it was so delicious. This smells wonderful. The entire room now just smells of this fragrant, divine, ambrosial cacao, which I bought in the market of Villahermosa. So I got my chocolate, I got my coffee, and I also, as many of you know, I love to collect books when I travel, and this was no exception. This time I went to Villahermosa, and down the block from the Regional Museum of Anthropology in the capital Villahermosa, I got this book on Maya concepts of the soul, different spiritual forces and beings that occupy different aspects of the human body, according to the thought that is expressed in the hieroglyphs of the classical Maya texts. So this is a very studious work so far, because I've already started reading it, that is exploring these ideas of the classical Maya civilization and what it can tell us about the relationship between the spiritual and the corporeal aspects of the human body by looking at hieroglyphic texts, but also some comparisons to colonial and contemporary Maya culture. So it's a very interesting read so far. I will say that another important thing that happened in this trip is, many of you know that I had a breakdown moment, this moment where I just feel this sense of overwhelming joy and impression and experience, and to the point where I even start weeping. And that happened to me actually on my first full day in Mexico. This was when I was at the National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City, and I stood in front of a mask that I'd actually seen many times in my previous visits, but because of the new organization of the Ethnology Hall in the second floor of the museum, which was just like, I think, in 2024, so very recently reopened with this new layout. And they produced even more commentary about some of these pieces that I'd been seeing before many previous times. But now I had so much more information. And for me, it was a Cora mask. Many of you know that I am a descendant from the Cora, or the Nayarite of Nayarit state in West Mexico. And this was, therefore, for me, a very important connection to my ancestry, my heritage, the native aspect of my lineage, and also to a point of my own identity. And learning more about how this mask was used for rainmaking ceremonies and how it connected to Mexica and other ancient civilizations, and the ways that they described the role of the sacred in these ritual performances and the role of the mask in these ritual activities. And being able to make those connections just gave me this sense of awe and these new insights that I had never before had the ability to appreciate, because I just didn't have that information until this new trip. And so that was a very important, a very impressionable point for me in this whole trip. So I was kind of surprised that this having this moment so early in the trip, but it's still very impactful, even like in my more recent meditations. So that was also a very important part of this travel. Tabasco itself, where I spent most of this trip, was hot. It was very, very imposing heat and humidity. Fortunately, there were a few places that did have air conditioning, but many of the places did not. And I just had to muster the will to get out into the sunlight. It would actually go up to the upper 80s, lower 90s for many different parts of the trip. And many of these places I visited had no air conditioning. The site of Comalcalco was was the first full day I had in Tabasco State, and I did the day trip there, and that was the most brutal presence of heat and bugs, but in this kind of very swampy area. But it was just worth it to see this ancient Maya city, which, as I described in the previous video, the westernmost edge of the Maya civilization, but also distinct and unique in its own ways. And I definitely have a lot of material, new videos that I'll be making about what's unique about this site of Comalcalco that I took a day to visit. It was just like walking through the crucible. I actually want to do a video about the alchemical reflections, like say walking through fire, passing through this crucible of transformation. But once I braved that heat and I endured those bugs, I could take on anything else for the rest of the week, and I did. So that was a very important kind of like first step into in the state of Tabasco was once I got through that, once I went through that experience and endured that and survived that ordeal, everything else was relatively easy compared to it. So I'm very glad that I had that chance, and I'm looking forward to sharing those insights from that visit to the Maya city. And after that, I also would say that the Day of the Dead festivals were one of my favorite experiences of the entire trip. That was the main reason I went to Mexico, was to experience the Day of the Dead in the city of Villahermosa. And I was especially impressed with the Chontal Maya altar that was set up in the capital, in that city center as part of the festivities. And I'm really glad that I could take some videos and photos. And I'll put some up here for the video so you can see what I'm talking about, very much in the traditional Chontal Maya of that area. So that was, and seeing all the costumes and hearing the music. And I even got this little guy that also came with that was being sold by a vendor at the festival. So you can see that he's made from a series of different hollowed waje gourds, and I just thought that this was adorable. The vendor, I think he came from the state of Veracruz, which is just to the west of Tabasco. So this isn't new to me. I'd never seen this style before, but I just thought this was adorable, and I love the ones that you could illuminate with a little, like say a little plastic candle that you could, or electric lights that you could put in the inside. And I think maybe there might be a way to do that for this guy here. I think it's going to be very cool decoration for the next Halloween and Day of the Dead seasons. So I wanted to also share this little guy, this new friend that I made along the way. I'm so happy that he arrived with me intact. I'm glad that I returned intact. So some of the exciting souvenirs that I collected from the week there. So the Day of the Dead festival, with all the music and the costumes and the makeup and and everybody just having a good time there at the city center. That was one of my favorite things of the entire trip. Another very important one was visiting the ancient site of Palenque. And so even one of my friends was actually surprised that I actually, this was my first visit to Palenque. In fact, it was my first visit to the state of Chiapas. But I've got a lot to say about this site. It's one of the largest and most culturally, politically, like say, intellectually important sites for our knowledge of what the ancient Maya civilization was like. And so I'm really thankful that I took that had that moment, that opportunity to make the day trip to go and see this site that is especially famous for Kinich Hanab Bakal, one of the most well-known Maya kings of the entire ancient civilization of the Maya. So I got to see many of the works from that were commissioned either by him for him or by his descendants. So I'm definitely going to have a lot of videos about that as well. It was just seeing these majestic views of these enormous Maya palaces and temples amidst this landscape of hills and rivers, and the ways that the Maya engineered this city to, in a sense, harness the power of the local wildlife, but also in a sense to reflect it, to mirror it. So this was very interesting kind of dialogue between the realms of the social and the natural, which is also a very big part of the Maya religion and spirituality, all in all. So that was, I have a lot of impressions. I'm going to have a lot to say about this visit to Palenque. So those are some of the most important impressions from this trip, and definitely going to be creating a lot of video and photography and other content in these coming months. And so I just thank you for following me. Because of your engagement, the YouTube channel just hit 4,000 subscribers, and I'm very grateful for everybody who helped make that happen. So I'm going to finish up today with some remarks about today's mask. So today's mask returns us to the Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City. And this one, I don't think I'd ever seen on display before, which is just an example of how even these places that I've been visiting since I was a child still continue to surprise me. And this mask is no exception. I think that it comes from Yucatan because of the color schemes. If looking at the way the decorations, the kind of the spotches and the boldness of the colors on this wooden mask, that is one suggestion to me that it's probably from either Guerrero states or with the Aztecs or the Maya of Yucatan. I'm pretty sure it's one of those two. And I also notice that the hair is all bundled up from porcupine quills. So this again could indicate that it's either from Guerrero or Maya. It's definitely somewhere in southern Mexico. There wasn't any caption or further explanation of this piece, but this one really got my attention because of the intensity of the color scheme on it, and the fact that this mask I had never seen before, or I don't think I ever recalled seeing this mask on display. So coming back to this place over at, like, say, time after time, is still finding new ways that this museum could surprise me. And that's the way I feel about Mexico in general. And another important thing to say about this mask is that because of its unique design, I was standing before this and feeling a sense of presence that nowhere else in the world could I see this unique indigenous design. And so that gave me a sense of presence that here in Mexico, I was able to see things that were unique to the world, things that I look forward to sharing, these unique particularities that I can now share with all of you. And but I also encourage you to go and visit these places for yourself, to like be in this place and realizing that insight that nowhere else in the world will you ever see this unique configuration of designs and this kind of like this spontaneous innovation of paint and color and sculpture all in one piece, this marvelous mask. So standing before it and appreciating its uniqueness and savoring the beauty of this one of a kind work, realizing that nowhere else on earth would I ever see or behold this configuration of indigenous art. So just standing before it and having that sense of here and now, this sense of space-time presence, gave me a very impactful impression with which I started this whole week in Mexico. So thank you for watching. Remember to please like, share, and subscribe to the Eye of the Serpent channel. Your support goes toward such travel research production, such as the one that I had recently taken for the Days of the Dead. So thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next videos, and good roads.